Hi everybody and welcome to Lesson 6. This is a 10-part Landscape CAD lesson series. You'll notice with Lesson 6 there were two files that accompanied the video. One of them is titleBlock.dwg, which is actually a drawing file for CAD. Position it on your desktop, as well as the usual PDF file. And in this lesson there's a number of layers that we're going to be creating. We're going to create the fence, the grade, and the viewport layer. Those are the properties. I do highly recommend that you print this off, as you'll be referring to this drawing quite often during the session. Okay, I'm going to close that down and I'm going to load up AutoCAD from my desktop. And with this series of lessons, we're not going to start with a DWT file, but we're going to open up our previous lesson. So I'm just going to maximize my viewing area and I'll select File, Open. Go into the last project file that we worked with, lesson 5, and there's our L1 drawing that we keep referring to, and this is where we left off last day. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to delete any of the extra materials that we no longer are in need of. There is our column, and I'm going to move that over on my grid to the left side of my page. And we're going to start working with this file. I'm going to turn on my construction lines because I'm going to be working them. Notice how they didn't move with the actual column because I had them off. They're not associated with any of the other line work that you've done. So I'm going to delete that. And we're going to add some basic construction lines to help us put the rest of the project together. So let's make the construction layer current. And I'm going to use construction lines, so click on Draw. There's my construction line icon. That's the one with the blue dot and the arrows that go in two directions. And I'm going to roll my mouse and zoom in on the bottom part of the actual column. And I'm going to click on the corner. Now endpoint is already being identified. It's the snap position. Now you'll notice mine is already going straight up and down. My FA key was on or toggled. If I press it again, I can rotate that line. For what we want to do, we want to put the FA key on. And the sequence is simply move your mouse up, click once, move your mouse down until you get a horizontal line, click again, and press enter. That's all we need to do. Now why did I do this? It's because I want to identify the second column that's here. And if you take a look at the drawing, it's 7 foot 10 between the column caps. The caps themselves have a 1-inch overhang on both sides. So the actual distance between those two columns is 8 feet. And that's how I'm going to set my construction grid here to identify that 8-foot distance. We're going to be using offset quite a bit. I'm going to click on offset and type in 8 and the foot mark. If you just simply type in 8, it's inches. Press enter. Click on the vertical construction line and click on the right side. So this space represents the space between the two columns. So now I'm going to copy this structure from this side to the opposite. Remember, when we work with the copy command, we need to identify the geometry of the object from the base point to its destination. So I'm going to click on copy. I'm going to put a window around this entire object. Notice how it's not picking the construction lines because I'm not enclosing that in the window. If I do a crossing here, it will include the construction lines, which I don't want it to do. So I specified a window. I don't want to pick anything else. I press enter. So the point that's represented here is actually this side of the column. So I'm rolling my mouse back and forth to zoom in and out. I'm going to click on the left side of the column, roll my mouse back out, and then move it to the right side. Now my F8 is still on. That's why it's giving me a perfect horizontal movement. I can press F8 at any time. So I'm going to press it again and see what's happening. So when I click on that intersection, see it found the intersection. I click and I want to see the snap action actually occur to make sure that I've picked the right spot. Then I press enter. There is my 8-foot distance between the two. And we have a little tool that we can always use to measure these distances. I already have my secondary menu open. If you don't, click on the arrow that points down and select Show Menu Bar. And in this menu we have tools that help us to identify things like the actual sizes between objects. So I'm going to click on Tools, Inquiry, Distance. When I click on that distance tool, I can then select the inside cap dimension to the inside cap dimension, and see it shows me it's 7'10". That matches my drawing. I know I've done everything correct. Press Escape. Now below this line, we drew the top 6 inches first and then the bottom 4 feet. That's because we have two different line types here. So let's remove these construction lines. We don't need them at this moment. I got a third one over here. And I want to draw a line that represents the grade. Now this is where we're going to introduce a new command called P-line. But before we do that, we're going to adjust our layers. We're going to add a couple more here. I'm going to click on the new layer icon. And I'm going to type in grade. We're going to make the grade layer green. We're also going to add a new layer called fence. And we're going to make the fence layer white. And I mentioned white or black is the same color. Right now I got a gray background, so it's a white colored chip. If you have a white colored background on your screen, this will be a black chip. Okay, we're going to click on gray to make it current. And then click on the X to close the menu. You notice it's current here. If it's not, just select the scroll down bar and select grade. So the polyline command is different from the line command in that it has properties that we can associate with it. So I'm going to click on the polyline command. And what I want to do is I want to find the endpoint of where the top 6 inches of the foundation wall is. And I want to draw a line once again straight across. Press F8. And I want to extend that beyond the edge of the column. Press Enter. Now I want to extend the other side as well. Well, the easiest way to do it is, because this is a symbol, a drawing element which simply represents an object as opposed to a precision drawn item, I'm going to click on the line and then click on the node and move it to the left. And what that allows me to do is extend this without having a boundary edge, because it really doesn't matter how far we extend that beyond the edge. Press Escape. Now, this is a P-line property or a P-line object, and therefore I have certain properties I can associate with it. To edit a P-line, we type in P-E-D-I-T or P-edit and press Enter. Now, if you weren't able to do that, press Escape and try it again. It's asking for a polyline. If I click on something that's not a polyline, it'll tell me it's not a polyline. But in this case, the grade is a polyline. And these are the functions we have available to it. So with this one, we're going to adjust the width to make it thicker. And here the width will be 0.5 or half an inch. And you can see right away on your screen that it has that effect. This is the better way to control line thickness than to actually go into the print menu and adjust the line settings. This will stay with the drawing, and it doesn't require an accommodating line set. And with grade, the way we represent it is with two lines. Now I'm finished with this command, so I'm going to press Escape. I'm going to click on the offset command, type in 2 and enter, select the polyline, and then move below. When we measure things, we always measure to the top line of the grade, not to the second one. The second one is basically symbolic to identify that it is in fact a grade line. Now everything below here has a certain property to it. It's hidden. Now we haven't talked about line types before, but we're going to right now. In the layers property menu, we're going to switch to the rebar layer. Here it says continuous. We're going to change that to hidden. So the way we do that is we have to load a line. I clicked on the word continuous and I get this menu. The menu requires us to select all the different line types we want to use in the project. This is continuous. I don't want that. I want to load a new line type. So at the bottom of this menu, you click on the word load and you'll get this menu pop up. And we're going to scroll down in this menu until we see the word hidden. There's 3 different hidden scales. So we're just going to pick the base one. One of the hidden line types is twice as dense and the other one is half as dense. So we're going to select the first one, which is just hidden, and select OK. And now it becomes part of our menu options. We don't have to select it, just click on OK. I'm going to go back to the word continuous and now pick it and select OK. And you'll see that that becomes the default line type for that particular element. In this case, the rebar is going to be a hidden line type. Let's close this and see what happens. If I zoom in onto the rebar, you'll see it's a hidden line. The scale of the hidden line is incorrect. We're going to correct that. Now, since we've loaded that line type, I can also take existing lines. So I'm just clicking on them and modify their line type. Notice it's in the concrete foundation layer. I don't want to change this menu here because in concrete foundation, I also have lines above grade which are not hidden. But I still want everything in the same layer. So all I'm doing is I'm clicking on the actual lines themselves, getting my blue handles. And this menu here is the property override menu. In here, we have the layers menu, which we've set up all our properties, and that's the default setting. This menu to the right allows us to override that based on objects that we have selected. So in this menu, instead of by layer, we're going to select the word hidden. By layer simply means that whatever the properties are in that layer, that's what's going to be seen on our screen. When we click something else, that simply means we've overridden that property. Once I've done that, press escape, and you can zoom in on that, and you can see what's actually happening here. They're hidden lines as well. Now, why are they dense? I hope to explain this over time, but for now, just type in LTSCALE, line type scale. It's set to 1. Type in 0.5, and you can see what's happening. They actually become even finer. Okay, let's try that again. Just press enter. It's the last command we initiated. And this time put in 12 and press enter. And you can see the line type has changed once again. So these are certain properties that are associated with our drawing scale. And when we move forwards in that area, you'll see how we'll adjust that. Notice how the rebar here is already hidden because its default setting in the layer command is hidden line type. But the foundation layer here is not. So we must select those as well. Go to our properties menu and change that to hidden. And there's our hidden line type. So we've discussed polylines and how we can add thickness to them. We've discussed line types and how we can change what we see on our screen. Now we're going to work on this fence. So let's switch to the fence layer. And if you take a look at the diagram that's associated with this lesson, you'll notice that the gap between fence pickets is 6 inches. Now the picket itself is ½ inch. That's not dimensioned anywhere. The larger tubes that hold the pickets are 1 inch. So let's draw this. I don't have enough information to draw it in here, because see in the beginning there's a question mark. Now that's done on purpose sometimes, only because each of these gates may be manufactured by a wrought iron manufacturer who will site measure once the columns are in place to make sure they fit correctly, unless there's been an adaptive method of connecting that allows for some variance. We're going to make the assumption that there's not. So first I want to create a couple of construction lines to help me with this construction. So I'm switching to the construction layer. I'm going to zoom in between these two posts, and I'm going to create construction lines based on what I see as the general dimensions on the right side of the right column, the ones that are along here. So I'll create a construction line that goes between the two columns, press enter, and this I'm going to offset to generate the line work that I require. So I select offset. It's a 1 inch base pipe, and then we have supports at 1'5", so offset 1'5". That one again is 1 inch, so offset 1. And the top one is 1'4" at the top of the arc, so offset 1'4", and then 1 inch again. So there's the general construction. The two metal pipes on the sides are 1 inch as well, so I can use an existing line or I draw some construction lines. So I'm going to draw my construction line vertically this time and offset that by 1. I'm only going to do 1 because once I draw it, I'm just going to copy it over. So let's switch to our fence layer. And we're going to draw the side posts first. Now you can see this can get a bit confusing, but I know that I'm picking up the base of the column, and I'm moving up to the top right. Notice I selected the rectangle command. I went right to the rectangle command and drew that from the base up and to the right. My construction grid is already laid out to the correct size. So now I'm going to copy, and I'm going to zoom in. Now this is where you don't use, let's say, crossing or a window, because I don't want to pick up the column. If I use a window in here, I may easily pick up the column as well as the actual pipe that's here. Now what I want to do is be careful not to select a point here where two lines cross. I want to be in open space, and press enter. And my pickup point, or my base point, is going to be on the right side of that pipe, because that's where I want it to connect to the inside of the right column. There we go. And now the objects become intersections where I can draw the other pipe work. So that picks up here and there. I just pressed enter twice, and I'll go in the opposite direction. There we go. Now this is an unusual situation because it has an arc associated with it. Typically with an arc I need a radius. I don't have one here, but I have some other information that's crucial to me. I'm going to click on the lower of these two lines and delete it. I'm going to use the upper line and offset it 5 inches to represent the arc depth. So I'm going to select offset 5 and enter, and click down. Now this technique we're presenting here is really good if you have a bunch of columns that aren't exactly the same distance apart. I don't want to have the same radius arc between each one, because if I look down the fence line, I'll actually see the bottom of that arc different in each object. So let's say they're out by 2 or 3, 4 inches between each of the columns. I want to specify an arc between a site measured column so the dip looks exactly the same between each of these columns. So I specified a 5-inch dip here. How do I draw that? I'm still in the fence layer, and I'm going to go into the arc command. Now the arc command has all sorts of variations to it. The one for this one is 3-point. And what it requires is 3 different locations to define the arc position. We're going to start to the left and work to the right because arcs are typically generated counterclockwise. So my first point is at the top of the pipe. My second point is at the middle of this line. Now I'm going to take off F8 because it's not letting me slope. The center of this line, well, it's a construction line. It doesn't have a center point that I can click on. So what am I going to use? I'm going to use a object snap override. So shift right mouse key. And the option I'm going to use is mid between 2 points. It's a very commonly used snap override function because it has some nice properties to it. So now it's asking me to define the 2 points that will then generate a midpoint between them. So the first one is here on the left pipe on the inside at the lower construction line that I generated. The second one is here. And you can see what's happened. Now the arc is generated to the middle of those 2 points. I can then click on the top of the pipe, and there's my arc, perfectly formed to the middle between those 2 posts. I don't need their dimension. I don't have to know its radius. I can simply use the command that way. If this didn't work for you, try it over and over again until it makes sense. Now this pipe again is 1 inch thick, so I'm going to select offset 1 and enter. Click on the upper pipe and a point below it. But because of the way it offsets perpendicular to the original arc, I have a bit of excess here. The best thing to do with that is trim. Go to trim, click on the pipe, press enter, click on the extended portion that you want to remove. That's all we need. Press enter again. I'm going to move to the right side, press enter, click on trim, click on the pipe that we're going to use as the cutting edge, press enter, click on the point that we're going to trim, press enter again, zoom out. There we have it. Perfect. It's exactly what we need. I don't need any of these construction lines anymore. So I'm going to remove everyone but the bottom one. And I'm going to move these vertical ones as well. Just get rid of them. And now I'm going to draw my pickets. So the pickets pose a unique challenge. They're a ½ inch wide, which is not given to us, and they're 3 feet tall, which is also not given to us. So I'm using those numbers for this particular demonstration. I do know that there's a 6-inch gap between them. I don't know where they start to the left or the right side of the column, nor do I want to do math. I do know in this particular example we have 14 pickets. So let's start. I'm going to click on the rectangle command, and I'm going to pick any point along this line. Now notice it doesn't have an endpoint and it doesn't have an intersection, so I'm going to hold down Shift, press right mouse key, and I'm going to use the command nearest. So this object snap command will find any point along the line. I'm going to click on a point on the line, and I'm going to draw my picket. So the picket is ½ inch or 0.5 and 3 feet tall, so comma 3 feet. And there's my picket. The space between pickets is 6 inches. Now you may say, well, I'm just going to use offset and type in 6 and enter. Click on the line, click on the outside. So why did this happen? Because we use the rectangle command. This is a single entity. We can't use it in this manner. So that doesn't work. I'm going to press delete. Instead, I need the help of some construction lines. So I'm going to go back in my construction layer. I'm going to draw my construction line from the inside of the picket upwards. So I'm going to press F8. I know the gap is 6 inches. So I'm going to select offset and 6. And there's my gap. So now I'm simply going to copy this left picket from its left edge to the construction line, and this gives me my 6-inch gap. Notice I didn't even have to know how thick the picket was in order to draw this. I simply needed to know that gap. So how do I draw the rest of them? There's a couple of different ways, but I'm going to show you a quick way of being able to do this. I've selected the 2 construction lines. I'm just going to delete them. I know the gap is 6 inches. So I'm going to use copy, but you look at this and say, well, there's nothing else to copy to. You don't have a snap position. But I do have a gap of 6 inches, and I can use that to my advantage. I've copied the right picket. Press enter. And what I'm going to do is use the bottom left corner as my base point of the unselected picket. There. And then I'm going to use the bottom left-hand corner of the next picket, and the bottom left of the next, and of the next. And I'm just going to zoom out, use my pan tool, and I can do this 14 times in order to draw it. Or I could do this. I'm going to draw 8 of them. Press enter. Press enter again for copy. Select these 7 and press enter. Click on the left side of that one and click again. And now I've got my 14 pickets. Well, I have 15. I'm just going to delete one of them. So there is my drawing. Quick, easy, using object snap, using construction lines, and drawing them just using the copy command. So I'm going to move these pickets to the actual gate itself. I don't know the gap that's on the left or the right side, but what I do know is the center of this cluster of pickets at the bottom must connect with the center of this base bar. So I'm going to move, put a window around all the pickets, press enter, hold down shift and press right mouse key. And here I'm going to go to the mid between 2 points, pick the right side of the right picket, pick the left side of the very most left picket, and look what's happening. It's picking it up right on the center of that cluster. And now I can zoom in on this window, hold down shift, right mouse key, click on midpoint, and find the midpoint of the bottom bar. There it is. Watch it snap into place, and it's done. Isn't that awesome? Let's save this file. I'm putting it in a new folder, so I'm using Save As because it's part of Lesson 6. And now we're going to be able to view this properly in a title block. Lesson 6 also came with a DWG file. We're going to open that and combine that file with this one in order to have a proper title block. So I'm going to open up that file. I'm going to select File, Open, and I've loaded that onto my desktop as well. And this is our title block. You'll notice that it has its own little tab, 11 by 8.5. So it's a piece of paper that's actually 8.5 by 11, but it's in paper space. That's what this symbol represents. If I click on model space, there's nothing here. It's absolutely empty. So paper space is where I actually have the title block. I'm going to copy this drawing onto L1. So I'm going to move to L1 in my tab menu at the top, and I'm going to switch over to Layout 1. Now you'll notice that there's already a viewport and there's already your drawing being seen. It self-populates as we work through the actual project. I'm going to click on this outer edge and press Delete. And I'm going to create a new layer. So in the Layer menu, I'm going to select the New Layer icon and type in VPORT for viewport. And I'm going to make this blue. And I'm going to make it current. Close this down. Now nothing's happened on our screen right now, but we're going to open that to review our drawing. So I'm going to be working between these two drawings, and this is very common when you're working between two drawings. I want to switch to layer 0 on my L1 drawing that I've been working with. I'm going to move to the title block drawing, and here I also want to switch to layer 0. And I'm going to be using a series of commands and certain steps that are particular to moving or copying from one drawing to another. So in the top of our menu, we're going to select Edit and the function Copy with Base Point. It's different than the copy command. Copy with base point. The base point is 0, 0. Enter. Remember where that is? Lower left-hand corner of our drawing. I'll then create a window or crossing over our entire drawing. Press Enter. Now I'm going to switch to L1. And on this blank page, I will select Edit, Paste to Original Coordinates. And now it's placed it on L1. So that's step 1. I now have the title block on the layout of my drawing. You'll notice I'm just moving my mouse over the word model and I can see my drawing. Now I want to see it in a viewport. So I'll switch to the viewport layer, and at the top of my menu I'll click on View, Viewports, One Viewport. Now without clicking on an endpoint or an intersection, I'm just going to move my window just inside of my drawing area, and I'm going to click one location and click the opposite. Again, don't try to snap to any of the intersections. And there's my drawing. So we've opened up a window inside of a title block to see our drawing. So let's just do a very quick review. This icon represents paper space, and paper space are the tabs to the right of the word model. So they represent the actual page. The viewport itself is simply a window that allows us to view what's in the model. If I click on the Model tab, I'm now actually working on the drawing. And this particular drawing, as I edit it and modify it, it'll automatically be updated within the paper space view. So let's save this file. I'll select File, Save. If you hadn't already saved it in the Lesson 6 folder, you'll have to select File, Save As, and then select the Lesson 6 folder. Okay, I'm going to return to Model Space, close down my file for the day. It's asking me to save again just because I've switched from paper space to model space. I've changed my view. It doesn't understand that I haven't really modified anything on the drawing. I'm simply going to select Yes. Save changes to the title block. The title block was a drawing that we added to this. We don't need to save any changes there, so I'm going to select No. And it's closed their program. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to working on our next lesson, Lesson 7, where we're going to work on the little finials that are on top of each of the pickets. And we're also going to be introducing dimensioning. So make sure that the lessons you've learned up to today, you understand them very well. Just repeat the lessons until you have a good handle on them, and I look forward to working with you next day.